The title of the show is Significant Works of a Singular Collection of ZCam. What are the reasons for this title? I can tell you two reasons. The one is rather simple, because ZCam has probably the greatest collection of media art in the world. Not only in quantity, but also in quality. But the second reason for this title, for this challenging title, is much more important. Because normally the evolution art is built on the model of so-called genealogy. That means a history of the influences. What you see here is not just a collection. You see here a new model, how art has developed. And this new model I call migration of media.
이 전시를 통해서 우리 광주시는 향후 미래의 역사를 써 나가야 할 새로운 메타버스 시대를 선도해 나갈 수 있는 미디어 아트의 생산 그리고 창의력을 통해서 여러 영역을 함께 연결해 줄 수 있는 그런 미래의 미술관으로 발돋움하고자 합니다.
But this really creates the tension also that you can really see how artists were using those technologies at the time at the cutting edge quality, and how they were at the time much advanced of their time and really wrote the history of the future. But artists, they can really look behind the scene of technology. They can create new visions of how technologies could be used and what would be the profit also for society of new technologies. For that reason, it is so important that media artists are given the chance to experiment with new means of production.
So we're starting this exhibition with the section Prologue, which introduces two site-specific and space-consuming immersive installations, because we wanted to create quite an impressive introduction to the exhibition space. So we're presenting there a work, an installation by Aldo Tambellini and Steinar and Woody Vasulka. Both or all three artists can be seen as media art pioneers, because their works are quite paradigmatic for the history of media art. In the second section, the theme is media, body and portrait. So there we are trying to tell you a little bit about the transformation of the genre portraiture and the representation of the body in different artistic media. So we start with a big photography by Thomas Ruff and then move forward with different video works, for example Bruce Nauman and Pippi Lotterist, and also photography of Lynn Hirschman Leeson, where we can see how the body got differently represented in these different types of media. So in the end of the section, you arrive then by computer-based artworks with great installations, for example by the artist Shilpa Gupta, where you really can experience that yourself become now a part of the artworks and that you can really interactive play with the artworks and be represented in something that we call the viewer's portrait. In the third section, there is the theme Media and Landscape. So here we are focusing on the artist's view on the landscape and the natural surroundings. Also here we start with a wonderful photography and then also video works, for example, Gary Hill and Nan Hoover, which depicts like the desert view, only with a small piece of fabric and light. And then we continue also here with some computer-based artworks, for example in the work Night Journey from the famous video artist Bill Viola. You can really like dive into an into a landscape yourself. You can wandering around a mysterious landscape, and this work is one of the first experimental video games, which was created in the year 2007 and was first presented in SIGGRAPH Art Gallery in New York. In the section Media and Architecture, we're showing you different examples for the artistic representation of our architecture or the architecture that surrounds us. So you can see several photographies and also computer-based artwork. The famous, or maybe one of the famous works that we have in the ZKM Media Art Collection, it's created by Jeffrey Shaw. And here it's the first time an interface where the whole body becomes part of the artwork. So you can ride a bicycle and drive to 3 different cities. So it's Amsterdam, Karlsruhe, and also New York, Manhattan. And then in the end of the section, there's also a wonderful immersive installation by Refik Anadol, the Infinity Room, which really blurs away the boundaries of the physical space and opens the physical space into the infinity. In the section Eigenwelt of Media, we're showing different examples of video or film pioneers, for example also the Steina and Woody Vasulka, which experimented with the medium film and video itself. You can compare it quite well with the movement in painting, the abstractionism, where like the color and the dot and the lines itself become the content itself, and it's not more about the representation of the body or the different objects. So this movement was quite similar. Here the artists experimented with so-called video noises and also with the scan lines of the media video. Another part of this section is also the representation or the reflection of the artists with the new arrival of the television. In the years of the 50s, the television set had arrived almost every living rooms. So also here the artists started to reflect that process. You can see pieces by Peter Weibel, for example, or Douglas Davis, where they try to reflect how the effect of the television is on also the audience. The last section is called the computer as an art medium, and here we're trying to tell a story about how the creativity changed from the creativity of the artists to the question whether a computer or a machine can be creative. So we're starting from early computer graphics from the 60s and move then on further to also computer games, for example, Bubbles from 2002, and then UR Code, which is a very new or more recent work, and then the NFTs, also like works that are created by the help of artificial intelligence. So after the computer graphics, we are also showing you some examples for computer-based installations, some computer games, for example, Bubbles, which was created 2002 and is also a very playful, interactive installation, and then end in the end of the section with the NFTs, the so-called non-fungible tokens, which is also a quite current topic that becomes reflected by different artists.
That artists are the antennas of society, they perceive certain developments earlier and differently, is a motif that is often repeated in aesthetics and art history. We invite you to experience the exhibition and to see for yourself how artists discovered the new media of their time, how they dreamt and experimented, and thus wrote the history of the future.
Mm-hmm.